Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona, and thanks for joining us for another virtual event. And today we have Daniel Kalla with us from Canada. He's going to be discussing the brand new book, The Deepest Fake. And we don't have signed copies, but we do have copies. So I'll put a link in the comments field if you'd like to purchase one. And if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in. And Barbara will summon me back on screen towards the end of the hour. So Barbara, over to you.
Thank you. I want to add that we created a really nice Canadian author bookmark, and our copy should therefore come with one. Patrick, you might want to leave Ian a note and tell
Good
him to
idea.
ship without the Canadian author bookmark, because we've seen a lot of authors from Canada who are very kindly saying so far they don't blame us.
Yeah,
which
not
which
at
I
all.
think is very nice. Nita Prose and I had a wonderful day at Linwood Barclay. Lots of Canadian authors are
Yeah.
old friends, Vicky Delaney. It's a great pleasure to meet you. I was saying to Daniel that because this book is actually published by Simon and Schuster Canada, but now distributed by Simon and Schuster in the United States, it gets across the whole time I've been in business, there has been a tariff on books going back and forth from Canada, which I think has to do with your 15% GTS, your sales tax. And the reason we know that is we're the Outlander bookstore, so we ship, books into Canada all the time. And there's about a 20 some dollar premium that Canada charges goes through UPS, not us, and also in the reverse. So I'm really glad this has happened. And now I can make up for not reading Daniel by actually getting his books. So with lots of topical things to talk about. But Daniel, since we haven't spoken to you, give us your background because you have a really interesting one as a physician who's always wanted to write, but somehow you studied medicine along with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here, Barbara and Patrick, and thank you for having me on. Really an honor. Yeah, my background is that I come from I'm a third generation doctor. I say you can't go to my family reunions and swing a dead cat without hitting a bunch of doctors. But my passion when I was a kid was storytelling. And so, as I grew up, I dutifully followed the family obligation, but actually it's truly a privilege, not an obligation. And went into medicine. So I put my storytelling aspirations aside for a few years. But when I first when I started as an emergency physician in Vancouver, I cajoled some friends to take a night course on screenwriting. And I was so hooked. That was in the late 90s. And I really was able to release my passion. And being an emerge doc is not like many other careers in medicine. It's not 9 to 5. For my case, it's not full time anymore. It's half time. So I have this, brilliant dual career. And when my kids were young, I was able to write in the daytime when they were at school. And now they're all grown up and flown the nest. I can write whenever I'm not working. So it's been, and the two careers, Barbara, really feel, they really fuel each other. There's such, writing can be this kind of lonely pursuit that you do in your own head, and what I do in emergency medicine is exciting, but it's also very collaborative. I work with so many people, so one sort of plays off the other, and I think I'm better in both fields because of them.
Well, you certainly must hear or, are able to imagine a lot of stories because people are under terrible stress as a general rule when they arrive at the art. We've all been watching The Pit, right?
Yeah.
So we're familiar with the kinds of, well, although I truly hope that no ER is quite as adrenaline saturated as The Pit.
No.
But it also makes it clear that emergency doctors can schedule their time let's say, way better than a gynecologist, for example, who really hasn't got any control over when women go into labor or there are, emergencies.
100%. We are, we're like, we're like these hockey, we're like the, NBA or NFL referees. We're very important in the moment, but everybody forgets us once it's gone. We're on shift or we're off shift. So we can really turn it off, and that's huge. But as you said, I mean, the pit, it compresses about a year's worth of adrenaline and terror into an hour. But the point is valid. We sit and we get the front seat view on humanity there. And I don't fictionalize real patients. It's a disaster if I try. but just the stories and the, the intimacy that we're allowed access to with strangers is quite unique. And when you're a writer and trying to develop characters, it's incredibly helpful. People
Well,
show
it
you
is.
icons how.
I mean, there have been hospital thrillers. Robin Cook wrote forever. Actually, Michael Crichton, started out as a doctor and wrote his
Yep.
first books under a pseudonym. Uh, I can't even remember what he wrote them at. And then he won an Edgar for a book and decided that he could out himself. But he was then still, I think he wrote it as Patrick, you can tell me, something like Hunter, whatever it was. But anyway, then he became Michael Crichton and didn't stick to just hospital stories. But hospital actually functions like a Christie country house. I mean, yes, it really does because you've got an enclosed environment and you've
Yep.
got people inside it. And so if you want to kill somebody in the OR, like Christiana Brand did in Green for Danger, or somebody up on the maternity floor or whatever it is, you can limit the field of suspects and do that kind of classic golden age structure. But
Yep.
that's not what Daniel's writing. But maybe you have, since I haven't read your earlier books.
Yeah.
Have you in fact written hospital mystery?
Yeah, several. My first book was called Pandemic, and it was, and to tell you how long ago it was written, Barbara, when we were talking about the title, and that was with Tora Forge Books in New York at St. Martin's, and and Tom Doherty himself said, I don't know if anybody will remember what the name, will recognize the name Pandemic. It was so foreign to us back then. Yeah, I've written several books that are set in hospitals or around hospitals, and there's innate drama for sure, as you've mentioned in the pit. But any hospital you go to, there's drama, both
Sure.
personal, and professional.
So, but that's not what this book is, although there is a medical component to it. So, what we're really, in part, the big issue that we're dealing with here is AI and how it intrudes into life. And I was thinking about that because at my age, I'm not advised to have certain tests anymore. But anyway, my doctor prescribed one called Cologuard, and
Mhm.
we are all convinced that I got a false positive because
Yep.
I had a CAT scan and everything was fine. But, they're still recommending that I have what is probably a completely unnecessary and very expensive test
Yep.
because this false positive, just in case
Yep.
it might be right. And I don't want to discourage people from having, those kinds of checkups and so forth. But I think as we're relying on something that's not an actual, personal test, but rather, I don't know even how to describe it, you are going to wind up with false positives, or you're going to miss things and have a false sense of confidence that you don't actually have cancer or whatever it might happen to be. But that's not really what you're talking about in this book. So why don't you set the stage for us?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, really, I did want to write a cautionary tale about AI. I'm not a technical expert on the subject, but I have, like many people, strong feelings and strong beliefs, about the potential good, and I see a lot of the potential good
Mhm.
in medicine and also the huge risks of it. And so I envisioned this story about a tech CEO who's a pioneer in artificial intelligence, but then he gets landed with this diagnosis of a terminal illness at the same time that he finds out his wife has been cheating on him. And he prepares to end his life on his own terms, with dignity in his own death. But then he uncovers these strange patterns inside his company and cracks in his diagnosis. And he gets this creeping sense that his nothing is what it seems and everything might be manipulated. And he can only trust one person, this private investigator who helped uncover his wife's affair, named Andrea DeWalt. And together they race to expose whoever's behind this conspiracy, using his own company, his own app, to distort his reality. And he wants to get to the truth before it vanishes, and he does along with it.
I thought it was a really fascinating story, and I gave it to my husband, who's actually a techie and
Oh,
interested in AI, and he truly enjoyed it. He was put off by the idea that this was going to be a book about dying,
yeah.
which it really isn't. But the terminal illness diagnosis is a part of it. Now, do we assume that the private eye used sort of standard investigatory private eye techniques, and the wife really is cheating?
Yeah. In terms of whether, yeah, I mean, I think we established pretty clearly that she really is cheating, and but the question becomes, is she involved in war or not? You know, when Liam,
Right.
the hero, starts to delve into this conspiracy, and it was kind of fun because it's his own, groundbreaking app that lets people talk to dead relatives through, you know, through artificial generative AI, what they call death bots, or that's part of the tool that's being used to manipulate him and
Now
his.
wait, let's talk about the app. I mean, I've heard of people who, when somebody dies, do not erase their voicemail reading and
Yeah.
all, so that they can play it over and over and still hear that person's voice. Um, what is this app?
Yeah, so this app that's called in the fictional app is called Their Story, but it's just an advanced version of what exists already, and it's exactly like you have said.
Yeah.
You upload old videos, old emails, and let AI construct a sense of this person, and they create this kind of ethereal, artificial entity that you can interact with. Like it creates this avatar that allows you to speak to your old and missing loved ones. As people are getting these AI girlfriends and boyfriends and stuff, this takes it to the next level where you actually, like a Zoom call, like you and I are talking, but you talk to the loved one that you've lost and never gotten over and such. And I
Wow.
think that technology is coming. I think my story is a little tiny bit speculatively ahead of that, but not far.
So what you're saying is that because of AI, that instead of just listening to a message that has been recorded and is totally passive, that there is an interactive element to it?
100%.
Wow.
As if they're just in another city and you're having a FaceTime call like we're having right now.
That's amazing. Well, I know that robotics is providing people with pets, for
Yeah,
example, and a way to, particularly, I think, in people being cared for dementia and other things, that, by introducing like a RoboDog, or whatever it is, it's very comforting to those people. So, yeah, I mean, that I think that's really interesting. Although, as a lawyer, I have to say that I can see that that technology could be used to manipulate people to change their wills. And, I mean, that's what's so interesting about crime fiction. Years and years ago, I remember reading, I'm trying to remember if it was Sarah Paretsky and I talking, but something to the effect that crime fiction is always cut across the edge of social change.
yeah,
That's what, yeah, well, I mean, unless you're doing, kind of classic stuff. And so for everything, that avenue that's closed, there's a new one that opens up. And and now I can see that there's a new
that's,
potential for a legal thriller that didn't exist before. Wow,
well,
I'm gonna have to
well,
talk to a few of my friends who are writing those kinds of books and say that's a really interesting plot line.
I mean, I just wrote an article for Crime Reads this week about this very topic. Like crime fiction, as you said, has always cut across the edge and kind of lived in the shadows. And the whole unreliable narrator has been one of the key tropes, or unreliable witness, unreliable person. But now you literally can create that entity where you don't even know, even if you have video evidence and audio evidence, can you even trust that anymore? And so I think it's going to be very powerful for a crime, and suspense looking.
Certainly going to be for crime fiction. Also, we already know it's powerful in the political realm.
Yeah.
And right, imaging, manipulation, so many different things. And we had something that happened the other day that I realized must be an AI thing. We got some scummy law firm. I'm glad I'm not a lawyer anymore when I run into these
Yeah.
kinds of things, but they sent us what was a really horrible photocopy letter claiming that they represent, I won't say who, and there was an ancient photo, and I mean we're talking like 15 years ago or
Yeah.
something, that appeared somewhere on our blog that we didn't have a license to use. It was a photo of an author, and so they attached a credit card form saying fill it out and pay us $1,250 and we'll go away.
Yeah.
So I threw it in the trash. And I don't know whether that'll be the end of it or not, but my point is the only way they could have found it was to have had some AI tool scraping along because I mean that thing has been gone forever.
Yeah.
And and so I thought, wow, there's yet another line for crime fiction. There's a new extortion possibilities.
Well,
Um, and
well,
that's going
that's
to make a real difference to, books that derive from um, hidden secrets or cold cases or something. If it's possible to unearth stuff in a way. I mean, if you watch British crime shows, for example, or any crime shows at the moment, there's the first two things they do. A, they check all the cameras because apparently there is not a square
yeah,
in Britain that is not
the
under
CCTV.
surveillance.
Yeah.
And two, they go in for cell phone data, and they can actually get a list of all the call numbers, the content, not to mention the GPS aspects of it, the whole nine yards. Um, and so that means that law enforcement stories relating to law enforcement certainly have to catch up. And think of what havoc AI could do if it were misused in a hospital. I gave a small example of
Yeah.
something but what if it's, got into medical records or whatever and started, oh,
Well,
wow,
but Barbara, you're doing a wonderful service of pitching the concepts in my book.
yes,
The premise starts with the fact that his app, the Heroes app, has been used to create a deep fake video implicating a senator in one of the most
right,
important elections that will tip the scales of the U.S. Senate. If he wins or loses, and they fake him accepting a bribe, and then he finds out it's been done with his technology, and he's been deliberately being set up to expose his technology. And then later on, he finds out that his medical records that helped convince him he was dying have been manipulated with AI. I mean, and this is not science fiction. This is today's possibility. So,
frightening to think that we both have criminal minds. It's just right. But you can see, those of you who are watching this, why I was really interested in this book, because the real life, it is not, as Daniel points out, it's not science fiction. It's actually right around us. And any one of us can fall prey to it. I mean, you see constant newspaper articles about people being bilked by, phone calls that are faked.
mhm.
Sounds like my grandson who, needs me to fax him or needs him to use Vimo or something to pay him $500 or, Social Security scams. I mean, I've been trained and our staff is trained not to open emails without, if we don't know who it is, without checking the actual um, address on it because, they can, I mean, the possibilities for being bilked are huge.
Yeah.
It's only going to get worse as everything moves online, and then all these tools can be used to turn that against you. For example, you can't travel without a phone anymore.
Mhm.
You really cannot travel. Everything goes through your phone. And here's a scary thing. I was flew to New York for Thriller Fest in June, and I enabled the United app, the airline, but it could have been any app, didn't have to be United, because that was the flight I was taking. And one of the things you have to do is you have to enable it to reach your phone. So I can't remember where I was sitting in the Hilton or something like that. And I get a text, and it's United saying to me, "You haven't yet left for the airport. Get going." I mean, literally, and I thought that's so frightening. I'm sitting here,
That's a very
and it wants to know why I'm not heading to Newark
Yeah, that's so
in
funny.
case
That's a
I might
very
miss my plane. And I thought, my God, it's like a damn nag.
Yeah, well, more like a big brother moment, right? It's like
Yeah,
it's truly, yeah,
wow.
no, it's 100%, and that's why in writing this story, I didn't want to get lost in the weeds of the technical. I don't fully understand the technical side of this, but we don't need to experience it. It's like my analogy is you can enjoy the ride of a great car without looking under the hood of it. And that's what I wanted to take the readers on, this experience of
Oh,
the,
you can. Yeah.
and like you say, it's not just the lack of trust and the vulnerability, it's the invasiveness of it, right? The way it can dig into your life. And your point earlier about the AI pets and stuff. we're also creating this strange scenario where we're creating loneliness with, with these incredible, with this obsession with social media and online, and then replacing companionship with this artificial companionship. And I just don't think that's healthy. I don't think humans were wired to have best friends that are robots or, that aren't other humans. And it's just, it's terrifying to think where that might take us.
It certainly is. And as you age, the prospects for being lonely increase. People are always asking me why, at 84, I don't retire. And one of the reasons is that why would I do that? Why would I stay home in my house and be lonely or adopt a RoboDog instead of the three I have when I can have wonderful conversations remotely with Daniel, or I could go down to the bookstore and hang out with my staff and fans.
Yeah,
I mean, the best way to age is to stay constantly engaged, both mentally and emotionally. And I
100.
think a lot of people are not in that position, and therefore this technology or these robotic things and all are beneficial, but they're also perhaps going to be ultimately much more destructive. Although I remember years and years ago, my mother read something to me. I think it was an article probably in the London Times or something, but they had broken into a home and an elder lady had died. And so they were there and she had left a journal open or something. And when they looked at it for like years, the only entry in her journal was no one came.
Wow.
And that just broke my heart. And I thought, okay, thinking about it today, maybe this kind of technology we're talking about would have alleviated some of the
Yep.
really terrible unhappiness that she must have suffered.
Exactly. And that's the yin and the yang of AI, right? That you're right. Like the people who can't get out and, who've lost friends and can't, isn't it wonderful they have someone to talk to? Because as you said, and if I can put my medical hat on for a second, in this emerging anti-aging field in medicine, the consensus is, far and away that apart from your genetics, the biggest things you can do to stave off aging is stay active, physically active, probably number one. But then, then number two is probably social hygiene and having that social community. Loneliness causes dementia. Loneliness causes all, isolation. Sorry, not lonely. And, there's no question you need that. So yeah, there's opportunities here too. I heard this great
Absolutely.
analogy, Barbara, the other day that it was not mine, but I love to quote when people were talking to one of the real life pioneers of AI was discussing it. And he said, at this stage, it's kind of like we've a person who's adopted a tiger cub. It's all incredible and fascinating and cute right now. He said, but you better raise it right because you're not going to have control over it very soon. And I love that analogy because there is lots of positives, but I like to speculate about what can go wrong, at least in this novel.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I'm thinking as I play Wordle every day, and if I really were pressed, I could play Scrabble online or go back to bridge, which I
Yeah.
played for years, or if you're a chess player, I mean, there are opportunities even to do, gaming and challenging things that would not be possible without that ability to, open your phone or your computer and do that. But let's go back and talk. I have a review that I pulled up using my computer here, my phone,
Yeah.
about the book, which I thought said some really nice things. If I can get up here, where am I? Um, with artificial intelligence continuing to develop at a rapid rate, it's people like Liam Hirsch, who is the name of our guy here, who package it for everyday use. Sometimes, however, opening the door to such technology leads to unexpected consequences. Author Daniel Kalla delves into the world of AI in a psychological thriller, skating the line between fact and fiction. I don't know that I thought you were skating the line. I thought you dove right in. Liam's company is poised to launch a new app that creates an avatar of a chosen subject with the ability to converse in a manner similar to video chat, which we've talked about. While the details are supposed to be secret, a leak generates controversy. We've talked about that too, the senatorial election. Liam's carefully crafted world suddenly gets upended with a terrible medical diagnosis alongside a report from a private detective about a personal betrayal. As the storyline unfolds, the author illustrates how easily AI can infiltrate our life in unexpected ways. And Liam, in the end, relies on a human, the PI, to unravel the pieces of this. He does not solve what's going on in his life using AI. And I thought that was a fair review.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, I like that. I like that. And yeah, I didn't consciously think of that fact of sort of human versus the machine to solve this, but that is kind of true. He becomes, as you know, he becomes petrified of technology. Like you said,
Yeah.
all our phones are tracking devices, as you so rightly pointed out. And so he goes one of the ironies is this AI pioneer goes incredibly low tech and gets rid of everything except an old burner phone that is a dumb phone, not a smartphone, so that he can, stay one step ahead of whoever's behind the conspiracy.
Here my actual, not robo, but actual dogs come in to see what it is
Uh,
that mom is doing. They won't stay, but they like to check it out.
yeah.
Right. So now that you've done this, do you see, Liam is having another story, or is this his story done? And your next book will be about somebody else's story.
Yeah, I tend to. I've written a couple of books, two books that had the same characters, and I wrote a historical trilogy with the same characters. But largely, I write standalone novels. I love to tackle, things that I think are that interest me in the zeitgeist. And so, some people think I'm kind of prescient if I'm writing about pandemics before they happen, but some things are just predictable, and I thought this was one. And my next novel that I've been working on and I just turned the first draft in is about genetically engineered memories because that's now possible that you can treat traumatic memories by genetically engineering the neurons that hold those memories.
Sorry, just hold on a minute. I have a really, really annoying and persistent puppy who would
I've
like
been,
to come up here and at
ah,
least say hi. You're going to turn right
hello.
here. Oh,
I'm not
trouble.
gonna, I'm not gonna bring my puppies in. They're a bit bigger,
There
but
she is.
okay.
Now she's a good girl, and she has this cute little face with this cute little,
Oh, a
I
little
know.
beard. What a sweetie.
She won't stay. She just,
What
is.
breed is she, Barb?
Hmm?
What's her breed? Or
She's a cockapoo.
oh yeah,
I mean, not a cockapoo, a cavapoo. I'm sorry. And she has a brother who she's all black, as you can see.
yeah.
And her brother, oh, get up here, Trouble, so everybody can admire you. There you are.
Aw,
Her brother is white,
what a
and she
cutie.
is the last of the litter. And we have her because the breeder who brought us her brother, who was the dog we thought we were taking, let us know in sepulchral tones that few people ever want to adopt a black puppy.
Aw,
I know. And
I have
so,
I have
the
one.
thought was a death sentence if we refused her
Oh, I
was
don't
too
think
much.
so.
Yeah, but she's
I
a
think
good
she would have
girl.
been scooped up. The kitty.
Oh, I know. And you know what? They have a wonderful time together.
Yeah.
And we have arranged they have a trust fund. So at our age, because we're kind of senior to be adopting, little ones, that they will not be broken up because they've always been together.
Oh,
And I don't want them to suddenly be separated through no
yeah.
fault of
Oh,
their own. So they're gonna be there. Yep. Anyway, I'm sorry, I lost. What were we talking about? I was
we're talking
distracted.
about my next book idea, or in the next story, whether I'm gonna write another standalone.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
electronically generated memory. And there have been some really interesting crime novels written about, false memory.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
forensically, there's some really interesting cases that have arisen in the law about people claiming this and that, and whether it's an actual memory or subconscious at work or
100%.
whatever.
But now this capacity exists, Barbara, that it's just in lab rats and stuff, but they can take, traumatic memories and apply this gene editing tool that will go in and affect the way the brain
Right,
stores them. And so they won't remove the memory, but it will downplay the pain and the angst and the trauma, anxiety caused by it. And so, I just extended that concept. What if it was ready in humans? And, what if maybe in some humans it had a bad side effect and they started to work with veterans as this miracle cure for PTSD, but some of them did
right.
some terrible things and then extended from there. I love taking I grew up, learning my history from historical fiction like James Michener, and some of my science from Michael Crichton, who you mentioned. And so I love taking these topical stories and try to put them in ways that you don't need a PhD to understand, just and still build. But as you know, if you're trying to write a mystery or a thriller, you need characters, you need a convincing plot, and you need to engage the readers. So for me, I love the challenge of doing that, and it's kind of fun to build this new world every time I start.
I can certainly see that you are having a wonderful time with it. And you've made a really convincing case that your expertise in medicine, and science has allowed you to write stories that maybe other authors couldn't do. So that's wonderful.
Well,
Tell me about the Canadian writers community, because we're coming to Canada. You should know that the major, oh, hello, there's the white one who's really unhappy now that his sister
oh,
is up here.
he's jealous.
Right. I don't know. Can I put you down and get Scooter instead? Hold on. All right, let's do that. Down you go. All right. Okay, you gonna want to come up? Yes, you want to come up. Okay, you get your turn. There we go.
Oh,
See,
cute.
they're so
Oh,
very
look at
cute.
that.
I
They're
know.
brothers. That's so cute.
Such a good boy. All right, you can
Um,
lie down. Anyway, the major mystery convention, which is called BoucherCon,
yeah,
named
yeah, I've
after,
been
you
there.
know who he is, it's going to meet in Calgary in
Yeah,
September. And we and Andrew Child, who's writing the Jack Reacher series, and his wife
yeah.
were friends. And so we've all agreed to, the four of
Oh,
us are going to come to Calgary for that trip. And we're going to take the Rocky Mountaineer from Vancouver to Banff, which
really? Oh,
my husband and I have done that. We actually did it round trip, and we believe that the ride from Vancouver up to Banff is way superior than
yeah.
leaving Banff and going down. The
Agreed.
expectation, the payoff at the end is dramatically different.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm hoping to see a lot of Canadian authors that we don't get to hang out with all that often. So are you planning to go?
I might be. I haven't confirmed. It's 20, is that 2025 or 2026? I
It's
thought it was,
26,
yeah, so
October
it's next year.
26th.
So yeah, so I think, yeah, no, I'd love to come. And it's great. I mean, there's such a thriving thriller mystery community up here.
Good.
Nita Brose was at Simon and Schuster. She was the VP of editorial when I
That's
started
right.
years before she started writing her own incredible novels. And so but it's such a supportive community. I'm sure you know Sherry LaPena's work. I've
Sherry's
got to
been
know
to see us. Yep. Linwood Barkley is one of my oldest and best friends. Peter Robinson, during his entire career, sadly, we lost him, as you
yeah,
know, came down from Canada on a regular basis to talk to us. We have a local author named Kevin Hearn who moved to Canada for various reasons
yeah.
in Toronto. And so he still comes to see us when he has a new science fiction book out. Vicki Delaney is an author we published at Poison Pen Press before we sold it. Um, I'm trying to think. There must be many
Well,
more.
in Vancouver, where I'm from, we have several great writers. A good friend of mine, Robin Harding. I don't know if you've read her thriller.
Robin Harding, yep.
She's,
And
she,
there's another woman whose name is, I just spent time with her at Thriller Fest and I'm blanking out, but it'll come to me. Hmm. And
yeah,
you have a writer whose books I love that are really interesting. His name is Steve Burrows, and he writes the Birder mysteries. They're
yeah.
actually set in England, and his detective inspector is a birder by passion, a detective by profession. Did that really well, didn't I? I like that.
Yeah,
Um, and, so I'm hoping that we will get to see ECW Press, a Canadian press,
yeah,
has
yeah.
an outlet here. And I'm leaving out my friend Ian Hamilton, whose books I absolutely love. They're business-oriented thrillers. And he's based near Toronto, but
Hmm.
his wonderful detective, is Chinese Canadian. And
Yeah.
um, I love them because they're business powered, and he really not only took us to exotic locations, but his plots arose from um, not, they were out of the ordinary. They arose from like the fish industry or the fashion industry
Yeah,
or,
yeah, which is
you
great.
know,
I think, as a reader myself, I love that when you take when you get a crime thriller in a setting that's not normally associated with crime. I think it's
I've
fascinating.
learned a lot about Sumatra and Borneo and
Yeah, exactly.
places. I mean, I've been all over Asia, but not to that extent. We're actually going to a cruise that ends in Singapore next winter on the same day, happily.
Wow.
We get to Singapore on the same day that the Orient Express goes from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur.
Oh,
So
wow.
we signed up for that. And
Oh,
then we're
amazing.
going to stay at Raffles, which is like, I know it's a real colonial thing, and I probably shouldn't say that, but I've always wanted to stay at Raffles and drink a Singapore Sling in the bar and
Yeah.
do the
Wow.
whole thing.
Yeah.
So that'll be really fun. But anyway, I'm hoping that a lot of Americans will go to the Canadian Voucher Con. And it's a
Oh,
beautiful part of the country. We have actually direct flights from Phoenix to Calgary.
I agree. Yeah,
So,
no, I think you'll love it. And then, so you are going to end up in Vancouver then on you're going to take
well, we're
the,
going to start in Vancouver
we're going to come from there. Okay.
and go to Banff. I have been going to Banff since I was like 10 years old.
Okay.
It's one of my very favorite places. Banff, Lake Louise,
Yeah.
Jasper, I mean, it's the Canadian Rockies are extraordinary, I think. But I have not bridged the gap from Banff to Toronto. There's a whole stretch of Canada that, other than reading Dick Francis, in his
Yeah.
Mystery
Yeah.
Took Place on the Trans-Canada train, I haven't done that, although we have taken the train
Okay. Barbara,
from
I got,
Montreal to Quebec.
yeah, which is beautiful. The ride from Banff to Toronto, um, I don't want to use the word monotonous, but the scenery is pretty, you're
I know.
going through three
I
days
grew up
of
in
prairies.
Chicago, and I am
Yeah.
familiar with, vast
Yeah.
tracts of prairie as you
Yeah.
go. No, actually, I was wrong. We went from Toronto to Quebec on the train, and one of the glories of the old Canadian railroad hotels,
Yeah.
largely owned by the Fairmont, but the
Yep.
one in Toronto is right across the street from the train station.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
the train to
The
Montreal that
Royal
connects with
York.
the train to Quebec leaves very early in the morning. And so at this wonderful hotel, the bellman knocks on your door at like 5:30, and
Mhm.
he collects you and your luggage, and he walks you down through the hotel and across the street and into the train station, down to the track, and then he puts your bags on the train. I mean, it's a big deal.
Isn't that better than CP Rail texting you and saying, "Where are you?" at 6 in the morning?
Absolutely. And even
Mm,
better, the train was held up by a medical emergency. They
mm.
didn't specify what, but they had to stop and wait for somewhere between um, Toronto and Montreal, where you get the train to Quebec. And they had to wait for 45 minutes for the emergency vehicles to come and collect whoever the passenger was. So in America, we were toast for the connection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, there it goes. And so we're looking up, can we still get to Quebec tonight? What are we going to do? Because there's only like a couple of trains that go from Montreal to Quebec. So we pulled into the station in Quebec 45 minutes later, something, and here come another porter, collected our luggage. They held the train. So they
Wow.
walked us across, and those of us going on, they put our bags on the train and wished us a great trip. And I said to Rob, Canadians are just so nice.
Until you push us too far, it's one of the sad things right now with the political situation is
Yeah.
that there's less tourism going across back and forth, which is too bad because I write most of my books in the States. I feel so close. I love going to the U.S. I feel so at home there, and it's really sad now that there's a bit of a divide, but that's where arts and culture can really cross that barrier. And I'm so glad
Yep.
BochaCon's here and we'll bring
And
up.
luckily we have Zoom,
Yeah,
which helps
exactly.
a great deal.
Yeah.
So on that happy note, Patrick, why don't you pop in and see if we have any questions from the audience? I'm still trying to remember what Michael Crichton wrote his first book as. Jeffrey
John
something.
Lang.
Hmm?
John Lang.
John
No,
Lang.
Oh,
no,
Michael Hudson. Michael Hudson.
that was it. Thank you very
Mhm.
much, Hudson. Yeah,
Yeah. He
right.
did a couple of different pseudonyms. I think that was the only, it was
Wasn't it Jeffrey? It was Jeffrey
Jeffrey
Hudson.
Hudson for
Yeah,
that
I knew it
one.
was Jeffrey. I just couldn't think of his last name.
And then he
Anyway,
wrote some pulp paperbacks as John Lang
right.
Mm.
and brought back into print.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Trivia buffs. Let's see here.
let's
Okay,
see.
here's one from our friend Stefania who's watching.
She's
Um,
in Italy.
in
Oh,
Italy.
cool.
Yeah. She asks, is there anything from the old days, something that technology has eliminated that you'd like to bring back into vogue?
That's a wonderful question.
Wow.
Stefania asks the best question. She really does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not really gone, but now with my daughters and stuff, I miss the old-fashioned phone call. Everybody texts, and it's in well, not in Gen Z and stuff. It's sort of like, they'd rather spend more time writing out texts. And I think, as much as I believe in the written word and live by it, that there is something in conversation that requires voice and intonation. And I think I wish we spoke more on the phone and left more voicemails and stuff than happens
The
now.
impression is there's a sense that calling without any kind of appointment or warning or something is considered very rude.
Yeah, I know.
That you don't just pick up your phone and casually call somebody. You have to schedule it.
Yeah, I know. So I miss that. I can't. Can you think of anything, Barbara, that we'd like to bring back? Well, how about the train? I mean, and like the old
Well, actually,
transport.
not a thing per se, but I do miss the slower pace of life.
Mhm,
I do. It's very hard to find time to actually read a book uninterrupted.
mhm.
And when you travel, you really are never away from work, right, Patrick? You're never actually on vacation anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, I know because we're so connected everywhere, and there's so much just competing for your attention.
Hmm.
That's one thing that I hate is I see it in myself. My attention span has really shrunk.
Yep, mine
And
too.
and it's like you're bombarded with probably 80% crap that you don't really need to be thinking about.
And
Um,
I
yeah.
totally agree, Patrick, and it takes you out of the present when you do that, and
Hmm.
I think that's it's been a real loss in our current society.
Anything
Uh,
else?
let's see. Um, yeah, about other Canadian writers. Are there, 'cause there's a whole industry, as Barbara was saying, that a lot of writers that don't make it down here. Are there any that you think we should be looking out for
Oh, that's
that we
it.
might not know?
Well, I've mentioned a few that you already do know. There's a local writer in Vancouver named Sam Weeb who writes kind of hard-boiled mysteries that are
Yeah.
really popular, and I don't think he gets a lot of exposure in the U.S. Yeah, there's several Canadian writers I should mention, and this is the part where I always blank, but yeah, let me get
I know when you're
back
asked,
here.
you get a brain freeze. It
I
happens all
totally,
the
I was
time.
like, oh,
It's a very big question at live events. And here's the thing, it often poses a dilemma for an author when people ask that question because they it's hard to pick out one or two when you might be insulting a whole range of friends, don't you think, Patrick? That's most of them end up, I find it interesting, liking dead authors, which is safe. So very often when you say, who's the writer that influenced you the most, you get like Raymond Chandler, or Agatha Christie or Nancy Drew or something. And partly I think that's because there are no one wants to offend, you know, a friend by omission or somebody that you really like by omission. I think it's a tough question for an author to be asked.
Yeah, it is. And as you said, it's an instant. The minute you ask me who my favorite authors were growing up or what I'm currently reading, I promise you I will freeze up. It happens. People think I'm illiterate, but I do read a lot. I just can never remember names when I'm put on the spot.
So who were your favorite authors growing up? Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick.
He's already said
But
Michael
but
Crichton.
but yeah, but three that really well, I will give you this because I thought this might come up. So I love authors like Michael Crichton who cross genres and are willing to move from one to the other. Ken Follett, I always thought did that brilliantly. I love his books. To go from sweeping historical sagas to modern day kind of thrillers and political thrillers and another author I love is Robert Harris. You know, I love the way he can write a series about Cicero and then write about the current, well, what was the one about the convocation or the
Conclave, it's called.
conclave, sorry.
We've been
Oh,
talking about it because Daniel Silva's new book is about the Vatican and the intrigue and the Curia and a papal election. And Conclave really visually expresses what Daniel was writing about in his new book, An Inside Job, that came out a couple of weeks ago. He was here, and so that's something that he and I talked about. But
I love his
I
books.
like Pompeii, which I think
Oh,
is
I
tribute
love
to Robert
Pompeii.
Harris. But then I remember when it was Archangel he wrote, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Not Romance, but Archangel.
What
So
about
yeah, his
Stalin?
range, his range is extraordinary.
Yeah. And so I always I do that. I mean, I have the luxury. I'm not a big name author, but I've had the luxury of being able to decide some of my themes and topics and explore. I've written some historical, novels and thrillers, but over a few different subgenres. And for me, that's a real pleasure. I had huge admiration for like Daniel De Silva, who takes the same hero through so many books, but that's not my aspiration, as a
I want to recommend Linwood Barclay again. I think he is one of the most original plotters. He's a great stylist
hmm
and a wonderful guy, and he has a great range. And in his book that came out in May, he has a supernatural plot, but it really underpins some amazing things. And of course, I like trains.
Yeah.
And, part of it was the train. But every year, my favorite title that he ever wrote about somebody who hijacked elevators was called Elevator Pitch. And I mean, it's one of my favorite books. He's been a bestseller for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. He and Sherry LaPena are the two dawns of Canadian thriller fiction.
Yeah.
They're perennial bestsellers and always good quality, amazing writing. Really looking. I have Sherry's book next to read. I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
Anything else, Patrick?
Um, well, there's the inevitable. Any Hollywood or what the Canadian equivalent of Hollywood is, interest in your books?
Well, I don't know how to answer. I've been down this road so many times and disappointed at the end of it. I've had several books optioned over the years and, lots of promises made. There's a new, I wrote two books called The Last High and Fit to Die, which have recurring characters. One's a emergency doctor toxicologist and her love interest boyfriend is a homicide detective and they work together. The first book's about the fentanyl crisis, which I have lived through as an emerge doc and seen the devastation. And the next book is about the diet industry and the dangers of unregulated diet pills and stuff. And so those two there's a current interest and they're trying to adapt them, but we'll see where that goes.
Well, I hope so. It's amazing how much American television and movies are filmed in Canada.
Yeah.
Vancouver, in particular, has really, created huge sound stages, and some of the westerns here are all shot in Canada.
Yeah. They call it Hollywood North. Yep.
Yeah, so that might work in your favor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that there's actually not a lot being shot in Los Angeles right now at the
No.
moment.
Well, part of it's weather. Part of it is the fire really made, life very, very difficult. And then there are incentives. New Mexico is big on that. I'm trying to think. I keep forgetting which European country. Hungary, but then right below Hungary is one of the old European, it was part of Yugoslavia, and they have huge incentives for people, especially doing historicals, because
Yeah.
they were poor. The city is still old, and therefore it's a great backdrop. But I mean, movies started in New Jersey, for heaven's sake, and they only
Yeah.
moved to California away from Thomas, well, partly to get away from Thomas Edison, who was a nightmare, and partly because of the weather, that you could shoot movies in the open, but that's not true in Los Angeles anymore. So, we'll see. Arizona actually used to be a big backdrop for Hollywood, especially up in Monument Valley. And we
Yeah, in
used
the
to
West End.
have up north on Scottsdale Road, Patrick, what was it called? There was a whole Hollywood stage set that we,
Oh, Rawhide?
yeah, Rawhide. We used
Hmm.
to take when my children were little, we used to take them up to Rawhide and they would have a daily gunfight at noon, with guys shooting at people falling off the roofs into
Which
the
was
street.
out in the middle of nowhere, if you recall. It's
It was,
not
yeah.
Newport.
Now Scottsdale has surged past it all the
Yeah.
way up to Cave Creek, but yeah. So anyway, nothing remains the same. Well, Daniel, it's really been a pleasure to talk to you. So thank you very much. I really love this book, and I might point out that this is a paperback at a friendly price of only $18.99. But really a thought-provoking book and really a lot of fun to read as well. So
Wow.
do
Well,
recommend.
thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Barbara, especially. This was truly an honor. Your bookstore and your story, it's legendary even up here. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much. I hope that you will, if not come and see us, we can at least schedule another event with another book, right?